Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Behind the Veil, a show that provides insight into the world of people and events. Today, we're going to be talking about vows. Okay, so the number one thing that everybody, when you go to a wedding, is watching two people get married. And sometimes these are fairly intense moments, and sometimes they're jovial and full of laughter, but that's really based on what the couple really wants. But how does somebody figure out what they're going to say? I mean, there's a lot of pressure on you for that one particular moment. So, if you're not great with words or you're not great with showing your feelings, what do? Well, our guest today is the perfect person to talk about that and to help you with this. And we're going to bring her on shortly. But before I do, let me bring on my co-host, Marcy Gutenberg, with An Affair to Remember by Marcy. Hi, Marcy.
Hello. Hi.
So Tanya Pushkine, is it Pushkine or Pushkine? I'll have to ask her that when we bring her on. Is the Vow Whisperer. I love that.
Great title.
Right? The Vow Whisperer. I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
It totally does. I mean, like, so many people are scared of writing. They're scared of speaking. And it sounds like to me that this might be the perfect solution for so many people.
Well, and the thing is that we've had people on before that have written speeches, and that is a very different kind of vibe and need than writing vows.
Right.
Vows
are
so
much more introspective to the couple.
Yeah. Super personal. I mean, super, super personal. Well, let's get her on. Tanya, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Tanya.
Excellent.
I'm so happy to be here, and I'm honored because your roster of guests has been really impressive, and
thank you.
Amazing. Thank you.
Oh, no. I mean, the thing is that we love talking to people and we love hearing about these needs that have been filled because, a great business is based on a need that was out there that nobody was doing before. And I don't know any other people that do vows. I know people that do speeches, but as far as like specifically like the vow part of it, that's hard. That's just hard. I mean,
and it's also a kind of, I would say, a little bit of I wouldn't say new anymore, but back when I got married, it was not as prevalent for a couple to really do their own vows. It was more of a yes or no,
Right.
It was not a personal.
Do you take her?
Moment.
Yes. Do you take him?
Right.
Yes. Okay, you're married. Yeah. I mean, and so I actually, before we get into this conversation, I find you so fascinating. Your bio is incredible, by the way. I had to actually edit some things out for the ad because it is you've just done so much, but I wanted you to like talk a little bit about you, where you came from and how this started.
Okay. I am not American. I was born in Brussels, Belgium, to an American musical orchestra conductor. And my mom was a painter. And we moved to New York when I was a teenager. And I was then, years later, accepted into the Juilliard drama department, where I spent 4 very, very difficult years. And when I graduated, I was super lucky. I went right on to Broadway, starring as Mozart's wife in Amadeus. And I did that for a really long run, a couple of years, actually. I stayed, and I had a lot of different Mozarts come and go. And I've been on went on the national tour, and then did a soap opera for 5 years, did a couple of movies, did a little bit more Broadway, and then came a point where I had to let it go. And it's something that I've always regretted. But I've come full circle with what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And I'll get into how I go about with the vows, but I use my acting skills every day. And I impart my acting skills on all the people I work with.
Totally makes sense.
That's, that was my start. I joined the corporate world running corporate philanthropy and public relations for luxury brands.
Wow.
Many years. And it was at my second wedding about 4.5 years ago, where I did not know anything about weddings other than having had one myself many years before. But I did write the ceremony in conjunction with my daughter who married us. And we did my husband did our vows.
Love that.
No idea what we were doing. But The wedding was covered by the New York Times in one of those like full page. Every Sunday they do one major feature on a wedding.
Right.
Along with all the little mini vows, but we were the big one.
Wow.
And the writer was at the wedding, and she came up to me afterwards and she said, Tanya, I know what you're doing now in your life, and you should think about leaving this big, glamorous, lucrative position you're in and joining the wedding industry. I said, what for?
I'm sorry. I'd be like, you want me to give up what? Okay. Okay. You know,
I
you just bought a big apartment, right? Yeah.
You know what I gave up? You know what I gave up? What I still miss the most is my expense account.
Yeah.
My platinum card. Seriously, that's what I miss about corporate America.
Yeah.
But
me too.
She kind of convinced me, and literally 2 months later,
yeah,
gave notice. I told my husband I was starting this business. I went in without a business plan, without a strategy, on a crazy idea. Nuts. Really nuts.
Wow. And then you just were like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Done.
Yeah. And I have a lot of different, not a lot, but quite a few services now that I do, but I started out with the vows. And what's important to know is I'm not the writer. There are vow writers out there, and more and more and more. When I started out, there were very few. Now there are a handful. But that's not my method. I do it actually very differently. First of all, I work separately with both.
Okay.
I think vows should be top secret.
I think so too. I believe in that, you know, because it's hard to write your vows in front of the other person because you don't really want them to hear you quite yet. It kind of takes away the specialness of it.
Exactly. So I work separately with both of them.
Right.
It starts with a questionnaire, and I ask them to sit with that questionnaire for at least about a month.
Right.
Because that questionnaire is so thought-provoking and very self-reflective, and you go back in time to everything you've experienced together, including the obstacles and bad moments you've gone through together, to how you met. What was that first moment when you locked eyes? Or, you know, how was the proposal? Or how has he made you a better person, et cetera, et cetera. And these questions, you need time.
Yeah.
And you want to keep coming back to this document because you might think of something today and you're driving on your way to work tomorrow and think of 5 more things to add. And so you come back, you delete, you add, and you keep.
And you keep going. I understand that. I totally understand that. I think
you come back, you send your answers back to me.
Yeah.
And this is what's really important. I take your words.
Yeah.
And I craft your vows out of your words 100%. It's not me talking, it's you talking. It's your words, because it's got to be as authentic and real as possible. I can't be inside your heart. I'm not
She's not an empath. Yes, I totally get that.
That I have created.
Yeah.
Which is their vow, their words. And that's the launching pad
for what you're going to be saying.
Yeah. We go back and forth until everybody, once that is done, we go into phase 2, which is the acting part. Right. And that's the part that is about delivery. And that no one else is doing. That is still my little niche. It's my acting skills, which I believe that the delivery of your vows is just as important as the words you've written, because you could write, 500 words that are just the most gorgeous words ever. But if you sound like monotone, flatlining, you're like the hospital monitor, it's not going to work. So we work on we work on how to make yourself as expressive as possible, how to enunciate, how to make eye contact and not just read off your vow book. How I catch all the body language. People don't realize there are women who they twirl their hair, or men sway a lot, all of this stuff.
Oh, they do. They do this a lot. They sway back and forth.
Yes.
Constantly, or they'll play with a change in their pocket, and I'm like, that looks creepy. Get your hands out of your pocket, please. That just looks so creepy. Yeah,
Exactly.
not that we're going to talk about like what they're playing with, but you know what I mean. I mean, or they pick, or they tend to pick, and it's like, okay, we gotta like pause all of those things so that way you can focus on the words, and really present them. I love that. And your acting obviously takes a lot of that help that people need because you have that experience. You know how to show emotion through words on your face and your body language. Sometimes just a slight lean in will say so much to somebody, especially if they're trying to make a point and they just slightly lean in. I mean, I mean, I could just see it. Like I'm already like in my brain watching two people under your instruction and just having this moment of it. What do you say to people that say, well, does this come across then as practiced or as, inauthentic?
I've never had that question come. Yeah.
Because that is going to
Interesting.
be something, that they go, oh, well, they're playing a part, he was taught how to do over rehearsed. Oh, he was taught to do this. How do you keep the realness in while also helping them like show that emotion? Because, people are different. There are some people that are very buttoned up and very quiet and very intense, and their friends and their family know exactly who they are. So then if all of a sudden you have this like really outgoing, gregarious human being that's standing up and everybody's like, who the hell is this person? We don't know who F this is. How is that? How do you make that happen for people? Like, do you work with their strengths that they already have and with the understanding that like, we don't want you to be somebody different. We want you to be you.
It's interesting, Keith, because I have never come across anybody that I feel is over-rehearsed.
Really?
And no, I haven't. And I'm wondering if what happens is the nerves take over and they are themselves. Even if they have practiced too much,
yeah,
I've never seen an over-rehearsed delivery of vows. And with an actor, really? If an actor is getting married and saying their vows, but the everyday person, I've not come across over-rehearsed any. No.
Wow.
Interesting.
That's really impressive. I have to say that's really impressive because I would have assumed that would have been a thing, but I love the fact that it's not. But and then what about like the words? Is there a like a golden time? Like time limit? Like is it like 2 minutes? Is it 5 minutes?
Like a formula?
Like is there a formula that is the perfect vows?
I tend to say between 450 and 500 words. That's about 3.5 minutes of speaking, but everybody speaks at a different tempo.
Yeah.
But around that time, there are people who say, I want to speak for 1 minute, and that's really hard to pull off. You've got all these years of material going into 1 minute, really hard.
Right.
So the sweet spot is about 3.5 minutes of speaking. Then you really get everything in. It's not too long, it's not too short. And again, I think the vows are the most wonderful part of the ceremony. That's what you're going to, as the couple, it's what you're going to remember the most. It's what your guests are going to remember the most. Mm-hmm. And probably also more than the food and the music and your dress and everything else. The vows can be so magnetic, memorable, impactful. And you want your guests to walk away from those 25 or 30 minutes of a ceremony going, oh my God.
Yes, 100%. And I love it. And and obviously if wedding videos being what they are today, they always overlay the words to the track, to what you're seeing. And I love the fact that you're now helping people make that a truly romantic moment of, expressing their thoughts. So I have a really random question though. Have you ever worked with somebody and you thought, they're not really feeling this. Maybe they shouldn't get married. Ever happened?
Yeah.
Because I was like,
I've happened there a lot.
I know I've been in, when I'm meeting with a couple and they're hiring me as a planner and I'm going, ooh, okay. I'm going to do my best to keep you all together between now and the wedding.
Okay. So I have a story The only time where it's happened, I was actually right. And I was officiating. I had worked with them on their vows, and I also marry people.
Yeah.
And the perfect scenario is if I'm marrying a couple that I've worked with on their vows, because I show up at their wedding and I'm a close friend by then, or their
Right.
therapist, or whatever you want to call me, but I'm not a stranger.
Right.
And I drove about 4.5 hours for this wedding. My husband drove me, pulled into the parking lot, and the wedding planner texts me saying, the groom's not showing up.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
He didn't show up.
Oh no. And you knew it. You knew it because you were talking to them and you felt it. See, I tell people that all the time. I'm like, us in the profession, it's like we have a sixth sense when it comes to these things. It is crazy how often we are right when we're sitting with a couple and we're like, whoa, okay, I'm not getting the same vibe out of the two of you. I mean, I even had a bride that the only reason she was marrying the guy is because she wanted to party. I mean, that was literally the only reason she was marrying him. And of course, 6 months later, they were divorced.
I was just going to say, within the 6 month to a year mark, they're gone.
Yeah, wow. I mean, she was pregnant with a chiropractor's baby, so I'm assuming, that might have had something to do with that. But, but I mean, that's the thing is that when you're getting into this is one of those things. It's like you really want to hire somebody when you two both are truly in love, and you really want to be able to have that one moment that you get to tell each other, how you feel in that moment, because there's nothing like young love. There is nothing. The passion, the intensity of young love is always incredible.
True.
I have a question about anecdotes. So if you have a couple who, let's say one of them or both of them, they think that they're supposed to incorporate something that's funny, but they don't come across as though you would expect it out of them. How do you go about telling them, like maybe we'll kind of change the dynamic of the way you're phrasing it, or what's your thought process in that instance? Interesting.
Yeah, good question.
So that, there's so much editing that goes back and forth between me and the person that I usually, I will very often, even though we're using their words, I do often at some point sort of step in and rewrite something that they may have said that I don't feel is quite right.
Right.
And they usually accept it, and it's not a problem. I love that, these people trust me and they trust my guidance and my expertise. And, if I say, well, maybe, we should rephrase it to this, and it's okay, great. Thanks. Done. It's not an issue,
I mean, there could be some seriously awkward moments if somebody is talking about like, oh, I love your breasts, or, or I love a very personal part of you. I mean, that I've had couples try to do that. And
really?
I'm like, oh, yes. I mean, we're in South Florida, there's Miami world. Hello. But there, people are very proud of their plastic surgery sometimes. But and you have to say, look, you're in front of a lot of different people, and not everybody's going to get the joke, or not everybody's going to buy into the humor. And you really have to think about broad strokes here. Like, what is going to be appropriate for, grandma or third cousin or friend from work.
So I've had, when that initial questionnaire is done and people send it back, very often they'll put in parentheses, what I mean is, or I know I can't say that, but I wanted you to know. It's usually something inappropriate or not meant to be said in public, but they're letting me know that that's what they're feeling or thinking, whatever. And it's fine. We don't use it though.
Right. Yeah. Like he's the best lover I've ever had. Oh my God.
Yeah. Exactly. Right.
You change that for like, oh, there's so much passion when we're together, or something, to that effect, that kind of gives a nod to it. I get that. I totally get that. But my God, you must get some of the most interesting private conversations.
I do. It's especially when I start to, just out of my own curiosity, I love people and I love talking to people and I love finding out about them. If they start writing about something, I will ask them when we're on Zoom or on a call, tell me about like what happened when blah, 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 or and I dig deep, and very deep, and I find out amazing things about people's lives. I'm really a pseudo therapist.
Welcome to the world of weddings. I mean, we all
Exactly.
feel like it. We all
Exactly.
feel like it. It's
I
amazing
know.
what people share with us. I
Yeah.
mean, it is
So,
really,
you
really
know,
incredible. Go ahead.
I was mentioning earlier that, back many years ago, people didn't necessarily do their own vows. It was always written for them and so forth. Do you find that even in these days that there may be one person in the couple relationship that wants to do them and then the other one doesn't want to do them? Or do you find, okay.
Good question.
Absolutely. And then you can't force the person who doesn't want to do it. You cannot. It's too big of a thing to get up there and speak in front of 200 people. If they don't want to, let's find another way. And another way, and sometimes, very often, the compromise is, why don't you exchange vows in private at the first look, for example, or write your vows in a letter, exchange letters. But if don't make that one person get up and do this. It's torture. It's not worth it. Find another way.
Yeah, it's kind of like I've had brides that are like, I really hate being the center of attention. I'm like, well, for this one day, there's not a lot we can do. What we can do is limit, how often you have to be in the middle. But, there are going to be moments like your ceremony and your first dance that you're going to have to be the center of attention. But I'm assuming that this kind of bleeds over to like thank you speeches and best man speeches and all that good stuff as well, right?
Absolutely.
Vow renewal.
Yeah, vow renewals. I mean, this must bleed into other areas that people are like, okay, you know what? She was so great with our vows. I'm now the best man at somebody else's wedding. Can you help me with that?
Yeah, that happens a lot.
I was about to say.
Yeah, and it usually happens later on in the process. I've worked with them already, and then they go, "Oh, wait, my uncle wants your help," or my best friend.
Right.
But what I will tell you what is now almost the biggest part, not quite the biggest part of my business, but another service that's huge. And I think the Knot came out with some sort of survey recently. I think it's 68% of couples are getting married by a friend or family member.
Yep.
And you, as the wedding
trend,
cringes. Oh no, Uncle Johnny is marrying you. Oh no. So, oh yeah. Well, a big part of my business is, just like I do with officiating, I work with the couple to craft the ceremony. It's very collaborative. I think that the couple needs to be in complete control of their ceremony. So it's really something we do together. And let's not put that on the shoulders of Uncle Johnny or best friend Sally, because they're going to be Googling, how do I write a ceremony? These poor people, it's a huge ask. So
it is.
We take that off their plates. And all they have to do as the friend or the family member is write their little part in there of why they're standing up there. Hi, Uncle. I'm Uncle Johnny. I've known niece Stephanie since she came out of the womb, and I'm here because I love them. Blah, 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 blah. Those 3 or 4 minutes right after you welcome the guests, that's all they have to do. And then I give them all the stage directions, all the logistics, and we practice the ceremony as much as they want to on Zoom, as if it's the real thing. Absolutely every part of it. How do you work with a microphone? How do you work with a videographer lapel mic? What do you do when it's time to give this one the vow book? Turn the mic so she can speak. Get the vow book back. Get out of the photographer's frame for the kiss, please. Right? That's the other thing. They don't get out. All the stuff. So I'm coaching them and training them. By the time they're there performing their ceremony, it's a ceremony run like a pro. And that has become so huge for me. It's unbelievable. But very often, back to the vows, it's the couple that have hired me to help them with their vows and to coach their family member or friend to run their ceremony. And I do this globally.
You do what?
Globally.
Oh, you do this globally. Oh my goodness, that must be crazy. Well, and and it is a big thing right now, especially here in Florida, because we seem to have the easiest wedding laws in the country. So basically, you could probably get married by your dog. Actually, I heard Colorado had that in the books for a short period of time.
Colorado, you can self-marry in Colorado. You do
you
not
can,
need it.
yeah, but they got rid of it, but you could get married by your dog, and you could actually literally put his paw print on the marriage license. Crazy. I know,
Oh my
random
gosh.
moment,
Oh,
but it's not anymore. But you know, the thing is that now there are script writers. You go online, you go through, you have a whole script that you print out, and then you fill it out. I mean, it feels very similar, but the coaching is the big piece here. Being able to in the mic direction, I cannot tell you how many times I've told the officiant before the ceremony, it's a directional mic. You have to speak right into the top of the microphone. Hold it parallel to your body, parallel to the floor, and they're like, hold it out here or over here, and you're like, okay, we can't hear you. Can't hear you. Okay, great. Can't hear you. So I love the fact that you're helping them do that.
Oh,
so
yeah.
aside from a 1 hour mass that would be in a church or something, how
1 hour
for
mass.
people that are listening, how long is the standard or how long is the typical ceremony?
Yeah.
Never, ever, ever more than 30 minutes, because then it does become a Catholic mass.
It does.
Yeah. My ceremonies tend to be about 25 minutes, and that includes the vows and the processional and the recessional. But it's still a very robust time of, there's a lot that is crammed into those 25 minutes, but it's perfect. Beyond that, you're losing everybody. Nobody wants to sit there longer.
No,
you know,
they really don't. I mean,
No.
unless you have one of those smoking purses that you swing back and forth, Catholic wedding, I just don't, I just don't understand the whole idea of having to stay there for longer. I mean, because pretty much everybody understands what is being said, and they've been to another wedding or they've seen another wedding, so they get the gist of it. And then after a while, it just becomes boring. It just does.
Yep.
And this is a show. This is entertainment. As much as, there's also this love and joy and, the bonding of two people, and it's a sacred moment. It's also about how your guests, what kind of enjoyment they've had, what kind of experience they had, because that will add to your overall experience. If they come up and say, oh my God, those were the best vows I've ever heard my entire life. Oh, how did you guys figure out these? I mean, that's going to add to their joy. The couple is going to, feel pride and be even more over the moon about their wedding versus somebody going, whoa, that was a real long time. I'm glad you guys had food right after.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I love that.
It's got to be. I mean, it's the couple's experience, but it's very much the guest's experience as well. And
100%.
It's the beginning of the rest of the day. It's the beginning of the 6 hour celebration or 4, or whatever it is. It's got to start on the right note, and it's also for the couple, it's the beginning of your marriage.
Yeah.
Not
Don't do something stupid.
Yeah. So
I always say it's their first moment coming out as a married couple.
Yep.
And expressing themselves to their guests.
Yeah, exactly.
And then how long is this process? So let's say that you've got a couple and they're like, okay, we need help with our vows. We really love each other. We really want to make sure we say the right thing. What's the process like? From first meeting, are there 6 meetings? Are there 12 meetings? Is it different for every couple?
Is it in person, Zoom?
Yeah. What's the process?
All of the above that you've just mentioned. I used to start much later in the process until I realized that people really do procrastinate a lot.
Yes.
Also, those last 3 months before the wedding, it doesn't matter if you have Keith Willard events planning your wedding, it's still stressful.
It's a lot. It always is.
Marcy Bloom wedding, Colin Cowell, great. You still are stressed. Let's not go in that territory of time, because so I really try to start as early as possible to craft the ceremonies, start with the vows. We do practice towards the end, though, to keep it fresh.
Right.
The practicing, yes, does happen in the last month or 2. But everything else, we could, not more than a year before. But couples, this also, couples are coming to you with a lot less time frame now, right?
6 months.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. A lot are 6 months, 3 months, 4 months. Yes.
Yeah.
So I work with all different schedules. But when people come to me, when it's super tight, I tell them, are you committed to the timing here? Because we can't have the quality of the work suffer So let's make sure that you're on board, that we really have to turn stuff around fast.
Right.
And I have had people come to me a week before, and we have made it work. But it's tight.
How do you feel about couples recording themselves saying their vows and then watching themselves? Is that something that would help?
Good point.
I've suggested that sometimes, yes. People have said it helps or it makes them too nervous. It's had both. It's the same as looking at yourself in the mirror while you're doing it. It's
right.
Sometimes that freaks people out. And it depends. I have a lot of different tips and tricks on how to practice. And, we find different ways for different kinds of people. It's, whatever feels right, whatever they're comfortable doing.
Well, I tell you what, when we started doing this show, I realized that I say like a lot, like, you like. And it was only by watching the shows back that I finally started realizing, what my little tics were throughout it. And of course, they're ever evolving, so they're not gone away. So yeah, no notes, anybody out there. Thank you very much. Because I'm sure they'd be like, well, you do this. But I think that's really important to get really comfortable with watching yourself and seeing, and looking at it from a third person point of view. Stop being so hard on yourself. Don't be like, oh, I'm so fat. Oh, I don't like the way my voice sounds. Oh, I don't like this. There are a million things that you're going to be able to say to yourself that you don't like. That's not what's important. It's like you want to hear what the cadence of your voice is. How is it sounding? Is it coming across clearly? Are you able to get through the entire thing without breaking down? I feel like that's a really important piece here. And then, so once you get done, let's say that you've gone through the process, you've coached them. Do you have like a refresher, like the week before, or 3 days before? Is that such a thing?
The practicing, absolutely. And very often I do offer, well, if I'm officiating, I'm right there at the venue. I grab the bride and groom separately. There's always 5 minutes of downtime.
Right.
And we go off and we do one last little warm up, which is so helpful. If not, very often a couple will FaceTime me from their wedding, an hour and a half before, and we'll go through it, because that little warm up does a lot.
It really does.
I work with people's schedules. Do you want to do it the day before, a day of, a week before, whatever they need? And I do a lot of destination weddings, and sometimes it's 3:00 in the morning for me, and I'm practicing with somebody in Hong Kong. I'll do it, whatever it takes. Whatever somebody wants to do. If they've hired me to help them, I'm here.
Been there, yes. And I had meetings like at 6 in the morning or like 9 at night, because they were living in Japan at the time. So yeah, totally understand that. I haven't done a 3 a.m. yet, but let's not put that out to the universe. Let's not put that out to the universe. So I want to go back to your, like, how you got from. So I love the fact that you were in corporate, but sorry, my first question is, what was the soap opera that you were in?
One Life to Live.
No, you weren't. Oh, that was so good. I used to watch that like a crazy person when I was.
I was a baby killer.
Were you really?
I was a bitch on wheels. I kidnapped baby, and I got so I was so bad that they finally had to kill me off, and they. They made me jump off a cliff. Well, I didn't jump off a cliff, but that was the story, in Argentina. It was so crazy. Yeah. Remember awesome. Andrea? What was her name? Andrea, right?
Was that Vicky?
Well, Vicky. Yes, Vicky. Oh my God. Right.
Oh my God.
Yes. This is so long ago. Yeah.
Holy moly, that's just crazy to me.
I haven't watched it in so many. I don't even know if it's still on, but
I know.
And did anybody ever come up to you on the street and be like, "You're such a horrible person"? Really?
Probably, yes, because very often, people can't distinguish the real from the acting, right? So yes, I did have that. But interestingly enough, my apartment in New York is 10 blocks away from ABC, where they film it.
Right.
So I was always in my neighborhood and stopped constantly, on my way to the studio or back home or whatever. And I think once in a while people did stop and say, you're just a bad person. And when's the next baby killing? So Yeah.
Oh my God. So do you then also use that experience to help couples, like, because photography is a big part of weddings, about how they should be standing and facing, like, do you go over some of
Positioning.
those things?
I do. And it's interesting because you know how we're always taught to, we have to show our value to a
Right.
couple. And it's not in the proposal. You can't show these kinds of things.
No.
I can't put in the proposal how I'm going to hold your hand, how I'm your emotional support, how I'm your therapist, I'm your this, I'm your that. I'm going to help you with all these things that people don't know about until it's needed or it occurs or whatever,
Right.
And yes, how to stand. And yes, the left side of your face is better. So let's put you on,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah,
For
and
sure.
that's always really difficult when you put your when you're out there and you're trying to sell your services, and people say, well, what do you do? Like, well, it depends on what you need. It's different for every wedding. I said, sometimes I'm getting a text message at 11 o'clock at night because the bride just had her soon-to-be mother-in-law say something bad to her and she doesn't know how to react to it. And sometimes it's, that the dress isn't back in time, and what are we going to do in order to make sure that, it's just different for every time. And I'm assuming that for you, it's even more so because, people are like, well, I can always, chat GPT it.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Oh, yes. You can. Yes, you can go to AI for your vows, but let me tell you, when people come to me, I've written a first draft. I want you to see it.
Yeah.
I can smell AI. I can tell it's AI because there's something, it's super flowery,
Yeah.
or like overly flowery, and embellished words and words that you don't normally use speaking. And I just can tell it's not real. So then, okay, let me see your vows. Sure, let's start with this garbage.
Yeah.
And I'm not just kidding.
Yeah,
But
it's garbage. Yeah, you can say it.
but
Like,
we go off of that. I can tell, like I have some social media interns who work for me.
right.
And I've asked them to write a caption and they've gone to AI and given me the caption. It's like, no, I
No.
know
No.
this. No,
That's
don't
not
even
going to work.
try.
So do you think guys who do you think gets a better reaction from the crowd, men or women, when showing their tender side?
Men, because you don't expect it.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I'm
Yeah.
like, because because you could always assume, and this is bad on us as a community, as living in the United States, where whatever, is that we do always assume that the female is going to be more emotionally in touch with her feelings, which isn't always true, by the way, and that the guy, when he shows emotion, that's going to be the moment that everybody goes, "Aw." So knowing that, if you've got this really great person that you're like, the gentleman is, he's gonna blow it out of the water. Oh my God, he's gonna kill it because what he's saying and how he's saying it's gonna come across beautifully. Do you then ramp up for the bride's stuff in order to make sure that they have equal showing? Or is this one of those things that you kind of go, well, there's always going to be one that's more inspiring than the other?
It's my job to balance.
Yeah.
They've hired me to make sure that these vows are not only balanced in length,
Yeah.
in amount of time or amount of words, but also the tone, the vibe. If one of the two is super funny, hysterical comedian, and the other is really serious, and oh my, I need to balance these two very different personalities or way of expressing. And so it's my job. So no, it doesn't end up to be like one is more than no.
Right.
We have to work with that and make it.
I love that you do that, because that is something that I could absolutely see happening. Is like, one has this, oh my God, heartfelt story, and that since I was 6 years old, I've always wanted somebody like you, and then you came along at the worst part of my life, and does this really amazing job of explaining their whole vibe, and then the guy goes, okay, and I love you too.
Exactly.
Or ditto. It's like I think that's a big part of why you're good at what you do, is because you're able to balance those two those two items to make sure that they both have the same kind of vibe for the guests, that both of them go, man, they both just nailed it.
Yes. And you know what is really wonderful, when I've had this happen actually quite a few times, when there's a question on that questionnaire, and when each of the, when was the moment that you knew for sure?
Yeah.
And I remember one of my very first couples answered that question exactly the same way. The same moment, the same 5 minutes, the same situation, whatever.
Really? Like love at first look almost.
Well, it wasn't when you first met. It's like, when did you know for sure? Oh my God, I think I've met the person I'm with that I want to be for the rest of my life. And these two, and it's happened several times, they speak about the exact same moment and what happened in the moment, but they are using the same words, the same everything. And I don't try to change that at all. I think that that's just beautiful. You know,
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely beautiful.
Ever get a little jealous of? Do you ever get a little jealous of that? Like, you know, that love at first sight? Because, you know, I'd be like, damn, that actually happens. That's actually a real thing.
There's a lot that you could get jealous. I just, you know what, I don't necessarily feel jealousy, but I, like you, the same. We work in the world of love.
Yeah, we do.
And it's a happy universe. I mean, yes, of course, things happen. I know. Yeah.
Yeah, usually.
Okay. But we are in the world of love.
Yeah.
And you better love being in the world of love, because it's, you know, so am I
not for the
jealous?
lighthearted. It's definitely not for the lighthearted. You got to love what you do. You can't.
It's very emotional.
You can't fake this shit. No, you can't.
No, you can't.
What were you going to say, Marcy? You're going to ask something?
Yeah. So, without getting into your prices, do you have packages based on how much commitment of time you're investing with a couple, or the different baggages of hats that you're carrying with you for that specific client?
Good question.
Very good question. I have, for the vow work, I have two packages. One is less of me, one is more of me.
Right.
One is, I really do hold your hand from the very beginning to the end, or the one where, and this is when the editors in chiefs of publications who know how to write, they don't need an immense amount of my time. So it,
Right.
you know, there are two packages, but also it doesn't have to only be my method. Very often, if the couple comes to me and it's a week or two before, I will say, you need a professional vow writer. We can't do my method. We don't have the time for it. And so that's another package entirely. I do have a vow writer on my team who does exactly that. So the vows, yes, different packages. Officiating, one package. Coaching your family member or friend, one package. So it's not complicated. It's really simple. And I work with, you know, all kinds of budgets. I do super high-end luxury, but not always. You know, sometimes it's a little elopement in the mountains somewhere.
I tell people that all the time. I'm like, yes, we've all done the $1 million wedding, but our meat and potatoes is going to be, you know, it's middle of the road. 60,000 to 100 grand is typical for a wedding here in South Florida. And, you know, sometimes the budgets are smaller, but you make it work. You figure it out and you make it work. You try to get the most bang for your buck. And I can see why this would be worth adding this to the budget, because it's such an important moment. And
this is such a small line item on your budget of 60 to 100. That's, you know, or even less. It's a very small item. I mean, what people spend on, I did a wedding recently and with a photographer who's super, super famous, and you know, he makes 80,000 and 90,000 per wedding.
Nice. Sure. I don't make that. It's okay.
Yeah. You know,
I'd do one wedding a year if I did that. I'd be like, you know what? My bills I don't have that many bills. All right. One wedding a year. Boom.
Yeah, I know. No, but I mean, there are vendors who charge a fortune of money, and I'm not one of those vendors that's inaccessible.
Right. That's nice.
No, not you either. It's
very
really
nice.
Yeah.
So how do people get in touch with you? Obviously, part of this is we've been running the ticker tape on below during the live show, but also, you know, for our podcast listeners, how do people get in touch with you?
ideally through my website, which is thevowwhisperer.com.
Very
You
easy.
can DM me on Instagram at thevowwhisperer.com, or if you want to email me, it's Tanya, Tanya, at thevowwhisperer.com.
And I see that you're also part of Party Slate, by the way. We love Party
Yeah.
Slate, but
Yeah.
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 And I'm also a member of WIPA, or board member of WIPA.
I saw that. So,
Yeah.
you're giving service back to the community as well. I think
Yes.
that's really super important.
I'm a member as well.
Are
And
you?
It says a lot. I am too. I'm a member of WIPA. I mean, we both are previous presidents of NACE down here. So,
Okay.
we're both big into giving back to our community and continuing the education and making sure that, we're stronger as a community. It's important.
Yeah.
And so,
absolutely.
thank you so much for being on the show. This has been
Tanya.
Tanya, this has been like really eye-opening. I mean, I didn't think we were going to be on that. I really thought, I was like, all right, 30 minutes, we'll be on and off. But this has been a really interesting conversation. And I think that there's a lot there for people to learn about. So
Thank you both so much. This was a lot of fun, really.
Yay, I'm so glad. All right, guys. So we'll see you next Tuesday at 2:00. But for now, we're all going to say goodbye.
Bye.